Fusion! Ha!
The form factor of the Miyoo Mini Plus, and the power of the Powkey DX55. This is the Anbernic RG353V. I've had the Anbernic RG353V for a few weeks now, and the more I use it, the more I learn. First, there are a lot of available OS for this one. To name a few are the stock Linux, Android, JELOS, and Arc OS. I plan to do 3 parts of this review, as I will be testing the Android, Arc OS, and JELOS side. Yes, I will skip the stock experience. For this one, we will focus on JELOS. I will be comparing this to the X55, as this is basically a vertical Powkey DX55, but with a much better build. Actually, so much better. First things first, this is not a sponsored device and I bought this with my own money. Looking at the device, my first impression was it was small, but this is sleek. This is my first Anbernic device. I have heard good things about the build quality of Anbernic, but having one in person, it looks as good as I expected. At the front, you have your face buttons, your function keys, a D-pad, 2 analog sticks, and you also have a menu key here. Sadly, on the stock configuration of JELOS, this button doesn't seem to do anything. The D-pads are acceptable, much better than the Powkey DX55. You can actually see Bomberman here not making any unwanted diagonals when going up, down, left, or right. On the bottom, you have your DC port, Type A to Type C charging only. At the back, you have your shoulder buttons which are in line and without any physical markings to differentiate shoulder trigger 1 from 2. When you shake the device, it makes a sound, which really takes away from how well built the rest of the device is. For reference, the Miyoo Mini Plus, which cost almost half as much, has some curves on the shoulder and feels more flushed. In addition, unlike the Gameboy Color which has a bump on the back, this one is flat, and this does not help with the ergonomics of the device, which we will get into later. Finally, on the right, you have your power, reset, and 2 microSD card slots. The first is for your OS, and the second is for your games. This is where Anbernic's versatility comes in. You have choices for the OS as mentioned earlier. Overall, this is a well-built device and a far cry from the quality of the Powkey DX55. As good as it is aesthetically, the ergonomics is definitely not the best. I don't have particularly large hands, but this just feels a little too cramped. The bottom of my hands have nothing to rest on, and both my fingers keep touching at the back. As an example, one game I keep going back to is Crash Team Racing on PS1, as this game requires the input of multiple buttons simultaneously: accelerate, direction, R1 for drift turbo. I tried to race against Ripperoo. I did win, but at what cost? If you are 30 years old like me or older, you may experience hand cramps on longer play sessions. I definitely did. 20 years ago with the Gameboy Color, I don't mind the vertical orientation. But now, due to my larger hands and fatter fingers, this already small device felt smaller. Let's take a look further with the device. The screen is 4x3 with 480p resolution. It has a 3200 mAh battery and an RK3566 chip, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth. You have a 3.5-inch screen here, which means older systems like PS1 and below will look great. Black bars are minimal, if not non-existent. It's so nice to have a screen that fills up all the way when playing games. As this comes with an RK3566 chip which can play some PSP games, the black bars hit back hard here, and the screen will look smaller than it already is. You may just want to skip playing PSP here. I thought that at 3200 mAh, the battery would be lesser than the X55, which houses a 4000 mAh battery. For the most part, that does seem to be the case. While the smaller screen with a smaller resolution may give you the same runtime as the Powkey X55, where playing GBA games and below can get you about 6 hours, PS1 gets 4, Dreamcast, PSP gets about 3. The battery drain on sleep is a weakness as it saps about 2 to 3% per hour. Leaving this on sleep overnight, and you might find a quarter of your battery lost. You might drain your device's battery unknowingly, and this is a bad thing for any battery. Lastly, this does not have fast charging. So this typically charges at about 2 to 2.5 hours. As mentioned on my short, the out-of-the-box experience is abysmal. If you bought this and are expecting a buy-and-play experience, you're going to have a bad time. It comes with a 16GB Kioxia card, which is already a red flag. It has a couple of games, but you definitely need to have a little know-how with this device. Look, I get that DataBlitz cannot sell this with pirated games. Nonetheless, take this as your warning. If you buy this from DataBlitz, this will not be a buy-and-play purchase. For me, I anticipated this and I had 2 microSD cards waiting. A 32GB card already loaded with JELOS, and a 64GB card loaded with games. I can actually use my 128GB from Powkiddy for my games here, and the save file works. Loading games is simply copy and pasting your ROMs and BIOS to the second SD card. Since I already have images scraped from my previous SD card, I added them to here and they worked flawlessly. As this is the exact same RK3566 chip with the Powkiddy X55, the performance is great here too. I am currently on 2024-01-21 build. Some performance issues have already been addressed, so it feels much more fluid here. For PSP, 2D, platform, or lighter games can be played at the stock configuration. Though I do suggest setting the resolution at 1x, as going higher will only tax the CPU further. Playing Metal Slug XX here, it runs well. For Tekken 6, you can play it without any changes. You can also see here that diagonals are easy to pull off. Martial Law's charge power punch and somersault kicks are easily doable. Unfortunately, even at 1x and frame skip and the CPU governance set to performance, both God of Wars were unplayable. You can see here how slow the gameplay is. Dreamcast plays fine, though it's kinda funny that Toystory's visual anomalies on X55 appear similarly to the RG353V. For PS1, as mentioned earlier, games that may require constant use of the shoulder buttons may be a no-go as this is just too small. Nonetheless, performance is great. For systems below PS1, I find this to be the perfect size as not only does the RG353V looks like a Game Boy, it captures the essence of playing on one as well. I would be remiss if I didn't praise this, but Wi-Fi is great. OTA, NetPlay, retro achievements, and image scrapers. These all add value to RG353V and they are thanks to Wi-Fi. The HDMI Out is a good feature to have as well as you can play this on a bigger screen. Similar to the Powkiddy X55, the RG353V has similar issues with JELOS. Namely, connecting 2 Bluetooth controllers. Connecting one is fine, connecting 2 is not. Second is NetPlay. At this point, this is more of a JELOS issue than the device. I have 3 JELOS devices and changing the device to client is an exercise in frustration. Third is that the JELOS team does not accept feature requests or fix bugs. If you find one, you can tell them but don't expect them to fix it. I would like to remind everyone again about the following, not just for JELOS but for all retro handhelds. 1. There will be bugs, freezes, and crashes here and there. Second, backing up everything periodically is absolutely essential. Okay, so that's it for the JELOS review. Let's wrap this up. Here are my quick pros and cons list. For the pros, the build is great. There is versatility in the OS. The 4x3 screen is perfect for retro systems, which are most of them. The good software, the good performance, the Wi-Fi, and the HDMI Out. For the cons, you have the bad ergonomics, the battery, where there are no fast charging and the battery's sleep-on drain is atrocious. It needs setup out of the box, the Bluetooth connectivity, the net play, and some random bugs, freezes, crashes here and there. At about 5,000 pesos or $90, the Anbernic RG353V has some tough competition in this price segment. To give you a few comparisons, its newer sibling, the RG35XXH, just came out, and it undercut the price at about 4,500 pesos or about $82, and it already has games. The Miyoo Mini Plus, which I am set to review soon, is significantly cheaper at about 3,300 pesos or $60. And this seems to be a better choice if you want a vertical handheld. $60 and this already has games. Lastly, my preferred handheld, the Paoki X55, is similarly priced, already comes with 2 SD cards with games, and the ergonomics is much more better, though the build quality is not the same. Despite the amazing build quality of the RG353V and the versatility to choose your OS, the relatively high price, the other options available, and the complexity of setting up the device before using it make it a tough sell, especially for first-time owners. I would still review this with the ArcOS and the Android side, but for now, I personally think that the RG353V is a miss, and I wouldn't really recommend it given the other choices. Last minute guys, stay tuned for my review on the Miyoo Mini Plus and the Anbernic RG35XXH. Thank you so much for watching. Consider like, sharing, and subscribing if you found this useful. See you next time, and happy gaming!